Will conservative critics of voter fraud affect turnout? Conservatives, especially MAGA-type Republicans, have been talking about how the election is rigged, accusations of voter fraud, deep state, etc. Most observers note these are false claims, dismissed even by favorable courts. That said, such continuous and sustained outcry may lead to their actual voters becoming apathetic and not voting. Why vote if the outcome is preordained? Kind of voter apathy. What do you think? Will it have an effect on turnout? Mail-in voting numbers? Voting day, turnout? Will conservative voters be less inclined to participate in the electoral process? Probably not. Voter fraud generally. What seemed to kill them in 2020 and 2022 was convincing their voters that mail-in voting specifically was a fraud. If Trump is knocked out due to legal issues, I suspect a chunk of his base will stay home. Otherwise, I expect the turnout to be higher. I'm not sure, but my conservative parents have talked a lot about not voting at all over the last few years, which is surprising. I think they felt embarrassed by Trump even though they still support the conservative agenda. They're not embarrassed enough to vote D, and they'll always criticize any D, but they might really be turned off by what the R have become. In recent elections, the real culprits in committing voter fraud have been conducted by the GOP. Sadly, they basically got their hands slapped and sent on their way. In 2016, prior to the general election, Trump was constantly harping on the idea that the election was rigged, yet when he actually won, you didn't hear a peep out of him regarding the rigging of the election. It seems to be accepted as fact among many establishment Republicans that Trump's cries of voter fraud cost them the 2 Georgia Senate seats in 2020. Whether or not that's true can't be confirmed, but I wouldn't necessarily discount it in that particular case. I'm more skeptical of it having any impact on turnout beyond that. Republican turnout was higher than Democratic turnout in 2022. They underperformed despite turnout, not because of it. I'll increase voter intimidation turnout. There is little doubt that Trump will call for his Second Amendment people to tilt the scales in his favor. Time will tell if we are doomed to reliving the Nazi Germany timeline. Definitely. I seem to recall many conservatives Republicans saying that they were not voting in any elections going forward after the 2020 election. Whether or not it's a trend going forward or what kind of effect this has remains to be seen on a broader scale. We'll have to wait for a few cycles to learn what's gonna happen. I think one side cries foul before, during and after they lose an election. These people should grow a pair if they want to represent us. Their behavior is abhorrent. I've lost an election. An election is just a popularity contest. If you can't make it through an election without crying foul, you had no business running to represent in the first place. Period. Without a doubt. The party is still the party of Trump on. He's the only one that can talk people down so they vote. Even then it either may not work or he's too high on his own supply to even dabble in the idea that 2020 was in fact a fair election. I don't know about you, but everything the maggots do makes me more determined than ever to vote. But then, I vote in every election, and I don't vote for effing Republicans. I'm voting blue, and I seriously hope everyone votes. Get out there and do it. Vote through the mail, vote in person, just do your best. If Republicans want to pout, not vote, and claim their losses have to do with anything but them being fascist loser assholes, I'm good with that. Their base is shrinking by the day and there is like 30, so I'm not too worried about it. They gonna turn down those accusations. Voters have short-term memory. Maybe have some messaging that they put safeguards in place and solved the problem. Now go vote. Who knows? History sort of suggests so, but it's a small sample size. The Dems cried fraud when Bush Jr. beat Gore in 2000, and Dem turnout in the next election was low enough to give Bush the only popular vote victory that the Republicans have had since 1988. Republicans cried fraud in 1960, with claims of dead people voting for Kennedy in Chicago. In 1964 they lost badly. They said, "I think the candidates and circumstances in the country will probably matter more for turnout than claims of fraud." Might be wrong, but psychoanalyzing the electorate is an inexact science. It seems they have learned a lesson. Republicans like Youngkin, Trump and Lake are now actively telling people to vote early, and by mail where available. What do you mean? 2020 presidential election had 91% turnout, right? Georgia was hotly contested, record turnouts. Apparently, more people are voting than ever before. Just tell your representative to vote yes on the voter reform bill and no one will be able to claim fraud. Unless there actually was fraud, then I guess the Retire Party will vote no this week. We will see. 2024 no. 2028 maybe. But either way expect more and more anomalies. They will mean nothing, of course, just go about your day. Nothing to see here. Hopefully will decrease turnout. Except conservative women voting for their abortion rights.